G'day everyone and welcome to an Oz Cyclone Chasers Cyclone video update for Australia today, November the 6th, 2014. This update is brought to you by Campbell Scientific Australia, when measurements matter. As we look around the world, the only place that looks like developing a tropical cyclone right now is India, and we've already got a tropical depression that's formed there. It's going to move in a northeast direction and hit India. Other than that, in the Australian area of responsibility, just to the west of our area of responsibility, there is a cluster of storms just in that area. However, that's not developing at the moment. Some of the guidance is showing that developing later on in the period as we head into next week. However, if it does develop, if it decides to develop, it's going to track out here to the west or west-southwest into the southwest Indian Ocean rather than southeast towards Australia. Really, folks, the first time we see the potential for a cyclone in our region is very late this month and early into next month. We see just here on the Kimberley coastline, you can see just that yellowy shading, and even that's very low percentages. Looking at the northern half of the country, we can see a lot of rainfall has fallen over the Northern Territory now for a couple of days. They've had some really good storms, so the build-up has finally arrived in that region. We've seen a fairly active period in the Gulf country, particularly near the border of Queensland NT, and also parts of northern inland Queensland receiving some decent rainfall as well as just a line of storms that developed across southern and central inland parts of Queensland. Unfortunately, as we look back at October's rainfall, though, we see that the bulk of the country, particularly the northern and eastern half of the country, experienced well below to some of the lowest totals on record in October. So we are definitely seeing an El Nino pattern, even though the El Nino is not actually officially being named. Certainly, the climatic and atmospheric indicators suggest that we are in a definite El Nino pattern, regardless of whether the fact is that it's technically named or not. Across the country, over the northeastern half of the continent, we didn't see too much in terms of variations to the average temperatures, but we did see some very hot conditions over the NT and northwest WA region too. So for those folks looking at this update from there, you certainly did cop a fairly warm October. Obviously, with a lack of rainfall and a lack of cloud cover came the fairly low minimum temperatures across northeastern and northern Australia. So you can see here some of the lowest temperatures on record overnight in the central parts of Queensland. North Queensland in general had below average minimum temperatures, and certainly the northern half of the Northern Territory, with such a slow build-up in October, saw some very cold temperatures overnight. Thanks to Weather Zone the past 24 hours, you can see some really good thunderstorm activity happening over southeastern parts of Queensland. Over the Northern Territory, we see some very active conditions over the top of basically Darwin and just south of there. We actually saw a really nice hector develop the other day, and we actually saw another one today, not as good. We've also got fairly widespread thunderstorm activity all across the northern parts of the top end. And similarly for the far northern parts of the Kimberley, we see a lot of convective activity this afternoon. We'll have a more in-depth look at those storms and showers developing across the north in our subscriber-only videos tomorrow. Okay, over the next 4 days, we're going to continue to see very active conditions here in the western top end and also the North Kimberley. That activity also extends further to the south towards the southern or central parts of the Kimberley over the next 4 days. And then the 4 days after that, we're going to see a decrease in activity over the western top end and an increase in activity, or rather than an increase, perhaps just a move a little bit more to the south of the activity across Western Australia and a broadening of the area of activity across WA. Once again, though, for folks who are watching us from Karratha, Onslow, Exmouth, those regions, probably going to miss out. However, Port Hedland could be in with a chance. Broome, obviously, and Derby, those places certainly in with a chance out of storm. Unfortunately for Queenslanders, as you can see, these coming 4 days are very quiet, except for southeast Queensland. There's not too much else in terms of storm activity across the state. There will be some isolated convective activity across the western peninsula and the Gulf country. The following 4 days after that, from the 10th to the 13th of November, once again some isolated convective activity, but this time in the far west of the state, possibly some showers along the North Tropical Coast, and once again potential there for more shower and storm activity across southeastern parts of Queensland. Thanks again for watching our update today, folks, and remember that if you would like a little bit more in-depth information in these videos, we do provide a subscriber service. So all you have to do is go onto our website, ozcyclonechasers.com.au, and click on the subscribe to OCC link. Enjoy the storms if you happen to be under them, and we'll talk again on Monday night.